Okay, so this isn't exactly the fun video that I have to make, but I basically need to talk about the prices being so ridiculous and where the economy is going to go from here. It's kind of a market update video, but more of a discussing where the game's heading. So the prices are so ridiculous on all the old items that they're never really going to fall again, and the copy counts are going to get much lower over time because people are going to buy the item and then never sell it again, or they're going to buy it and grade it. Plus, a lot of the people are going to quit that own these items. So, a lot of the champ owners probably aren't playing anymore because they're the competitive players and ranked hasn't been in the game for months. So, realistically, most of them are gone. The only champs left in circulation will be the ones that the traders bought off of the PvPers. Because all we really have now are the no life XP grinders and the PvP sweats. All the traders are kind of dead. There aren't many left. There are still people that do cross trade, but the legitimate traders have pretty much died off entirely. And if you're one of the legitimate traders that's trying to work toward things, the main reason that all of the old legit traders quit is because it's getting so unreasonable. You're basically playing the game and earning slave labor wages in game because the cross trade people make so much more money than the legit players just because they're willing to spend a little bit of money. You make a lot more in this game by having a job and going into cross trade than you do by playing the game normally. So it's pretty discouraging for a lot of the legit people, and that's why so many quit. So just for an example, and then if you're going to be a gem toki grinder, you're going to hard farm gems to get what you want. Again, this is going to take you over, almost 200 hours. This is going to take you, God, what would it be? It's 10 hours per million, let's say nowadays. So it's 750 hours for a champ scythe. That's not reasonable. Like, people don't have that much time. Maybe I'm doing the math wrong, but it doesn't really matter. Divine used to be worth a mill. You could get a divine every 2 or 3 days if you were playing actively. Nowadays, you'd be lucky to get a divine ever. And all of these prices will keep inflating. So there isn't really any hope that it's going to be easier to get the items. If the copy count's under 10,000, or, it's like Champ where it's ridiculously low, the chances of you getting these items are just abysmal. You're realistically never going to be able to afford these. And then the few items that have maybe 10 to 20,000 copies, like Blaze and Cyber, these are going to be traded up to values where they aren't really usable. Right now, Cyber is low enough that some people can flip it, but once it trades up to 15 mil, 20 mil, it's not going to work the same way. Like Amethyst right now isn't really something people are flipping just because there aren't that many of them. And Cyber is eventually going to be the same way. All the Inferno pack items will be the same. Gem is going to be the same. Also, a lot of these are going to get gambled to S and either burned or they'll make it to S grade and then you can't do anything about it. The only items that will really be untouched are Wrath, Spirit, the gem pack items that will never be removed, like War, Cursed Spirit Blade, all that kind of stuff. But the problem with trading is you can't recommend it to a new player nowadays because the prices are getting so absurd that you can't even afford to snipe an item at 10%. If you found a champ at 10% value, it's still 7.5 mil, and you're not going to find that. It's super unreasonable. The best you find usually is maybe 10 or 20% under market if someone's just coming back to the game or they don't really care about pricing. But nowadays, you already have to have a ton of in game value to obtain any item. So it's not really possible. So I just don't recommend trading as a whole. And the prices will only get worse because the copy counts are going so low for these items as more and more people quit that the chances of you being able to find one are going to get really low and the demand's not going to change. It's just, you know, how if you can find one of the few remaining copies left of the weapon you want. So, as much as the economy's deflated now, I'm guessing gems go to an even lower value. So, just an example for the people that understand cross trade and like the general value of items. I'm expecting gems to go down in value because gems will always be obtainable and the items will get rarer and rarer. So realistically, they'll keep inflating. Now, you're going to have days where it's manipulated or days where someone's stupid and sells it low. That's always going to happen. But overall, the values of items like Enigma and Divine should keep climbing to just absurd values. These will probably hit 60, 70, 80 mil, and then Champ might even go up to 100. Who knows? The main thing you wonder is there going to be a cap on what people are willing to pay for items like Champ? I don't really think there is a cap. It's just a matter of if the values get so absurdly high that you won't see trades happening for these items very often. So people might think it's a lower value, but it's just people can't afford it, so you don't see them traded very often. But that's basically where the game's going. There's no fix to this economy. The only way that it gets fixed is by adding new copies, which would tank the economy of all the people that own all the old weapons. So the only fix is adding more weapons, more copies of all these things. But that can't happen without sub coming back to the game. If they change inflation values, like they changed gem values a while back, that didn't change anything. That didn't improve it. You made it so people can farm more gems, but all that happened was you made everything inflate even harder. So short-term fixes like increasing the amount of gems you earn doesn't do anything. All you're doing is making the prices go up again on every single item, and you're devaluing all the gems that currently exist in the economy. So it doesn't really help. They need to add new copies, and until that happens, there's no way that the game that the prices will improve. And again, I'm not saying they should add new copies, but that's the only way that it fixes. And they basically need to decide whether they support the new players or they support the veterans. The veterans will be absolutely livid if their items decrease in value. So they'll probably kill off all the old veterans if they re add packs without a warning. But if they don't re add packs, I think there's no reason a new trader should get into trading. The values are so absurdly high that it's just not worth doing. I mean, for context, there's like Crystal Dahlia was, 2 mil or 750K when it was current. Now, it didn't inflate as much as other things, but it's not that old. It came around, I think in March. It's around Valentine's Day it came out. It was worth 750K back then. Now it's 10 mil or whatever the absurd value it normally sits at now. It's just the amount of time you have to spend for these things is just horrible. So I don't think it's worth people trading, and I don't think subs going to ever come back to the game because Anime Defenders is still doing well, and Vanguard's never released to compete, that I know of at least, because Anime Defenders is still sitting around 200K players. So they got a foothold in the tower defense space, so I don't see why they're going to come back to Deathball. Deathball really needs to be sold off to a developer that cares, or it needs to be worked on. He needs to get a dev team on it again. Because I think they moved their whole dev team onto Anime Defenders as far as the developers go. I know that they still maintain this game, from what I've heard at least, and they still have moderation on this game, but they need actual updates and testing back. That's the problem. This game needs to feel like it's going somewhere for people to care about trading again. Trading in a dying game doesn't really make sense, so the values are going to be really messed up. The values are high because all the no lifes are trying to get all the S grades and, everything because they still care. But all the new traders aren't really caring anymore because there's no point for them. So it's just very warped in general. There's a lot that needs to happen to the economy for it to be fixed. Mostly just new copies need to be added, which I know old players hate the idea of that. I agree. I'm not a huge fan of someone just getting an S Triheed and it being the same as mine. So I'm not saying I like it, but that's kind of the state of the game we're in. And you either let trading slowly die off on the idea of we don't want to upset the veterans, or you have to shake it up somehow so everyone can actually enjoy it again. They really need to make it so items don't inflate to absurd values, and they need to make it so some level of new copies come in for old items regularly so they don't inflate to insane values. I don't even know how they do it. Maybe you'd run a competition or a tournament, or I don't know, some sort of challenge, and then you'd reward copies of Divine, copies of Cyber, copies of Champ and Diamonds, stuff like that. That's my idea, but I don't think this game's gonna get worked on again. So that's kind of it as far as the game goes. I just don't recommend trading. There's nothing I can say around that. Like, oh, trading's bad, but it's fun. No, it's not. Trading's miserable, and it isn't gonna improve, and it isn't going anywhere, and the game's dying. So why would you trade for items in a dying game that isn't cared about by its developer? And our best case is basically he comes back, gives us a final update, and quits again, or he sells it off to someone, and then who knows what the hell the person he sells it off to does with it. Realistically, if he sells it off, they'd ruin it because all the developers for the other Blade Ball, Death Ball type games are pretty bad. I mean, if you look at any of the other games similar to Death Ball, the base gameplay is terrible. So the quality of other developers running their game is bad. The hitboxes in Blade Ball are miserable. So if they ever messed up part of the Death Ball gameplay loop, they would ruin the game entirely for most of us. So the new developer would have to basically leave the main game completely untouched outside of adding new maps, and new champions they'd have to be really careful about adding too, because they probably would mess it up. You would assume. So we're just kind of stuck in this state where trading doesn't make sense and caring about this game doesn't make sense. And yes, I've been making videos, but the only reason I'm making videos now is I still know a lot about the game. I still like helping people that enjoy trading or enjoy playing the game, but I don't want to give people a false hope of, oh yeah, Divine's 52 mil, surely you can work up to it. There's no reason for you to trade that much. You're realistically not going to do this. Like, you're not going to go from zero to a Divine. You're not going to go from zero to an Enigma. You're not, like, there's no point. You can't snipe almost anything. Protector you can buy, and sure, but it's barely climbed since it was released. Um, Same, Spirit is never going to go up. It's been 250k for months. Rainbow's never going to go up. Wrath has actually gone down. So then all the, War has been 200k for forever. Cursed Spirit's been 150k forever. So all of the currently accessible items are stuck at the current pricing and will never move. You're never going to benefit from inflation from the current items. So you need to stockpile an absurd amount of current items, buy into something that will actually climb, like an Inferno, a gem, something like that. Maybe an elf if you want cheaper. And then you buy into those to hold value and inflate a little bit with the market. Well, elf has really low copy or a really high copy amount, so it's not really that useful. You'd want to buy into something like Dahlia or Amethyst or something a little bit bigger if you're really going to want to climb with the market. So that's just where we're stuck. You can't really grow your inventory or benefit off of the inflation being crazy because the items are so expensive that you have no way to reach, like, you have no way to bridge the gap between 0 and around 10 mil to get to any of these big items. If there was an easy way for you to go from 0 to 12 mil or 15 mil, and you could buy into a Divine or a Darkness or something like that, or get a Lotus, a Dahlia, anything good like that that will go up and has under 10k copies, that would be your ideal. The problem is we have no bridge for that. So it's miserable going from 0 to 10 mil. And just including cross trade also. If people cross traded, why the hell should you have to pay, what is it? It would be like $14 or $20 to go from 0 to 10 mil or whatever. which again, don't do cross trade, but I'm saying just as an example, you shouldn't have to pay an entry fee into trading. It just doesn't make sense. The values are so absurd that it's not reasonable to trade as a legitimate trader anymore. Whatever you have is going to be going up forever, and the only thing you can do is really buy into items that will go up harder. And there's nothing that's going to create a dip in the market outside of people outside of items being too expensive for you to trade. So again, long video, but I really just don't think trading's worth it at this point. S grades are going to get even more unreasonable. If you want S grades, gambling is really the only realistic option, but you're probably going to burn your whole inventory trying to gamble. I When I was buying the S Nutcracker for my friends, I gave 78 mil to the owner of the S Nutcracker. They gambled all 78 million and they only got one S grade. Everything else burned. And they got mostly things around 3 to 5 mil and a few cheaper ones. So the chances of you hitting an S grade are very slim from a base weapon. So it's not that gambling is a good idea. You'll probably lose everything trying to gamble, but it's getting to be the only way that you're going to make an S grade, because trading from 0 to whatever the current items are worth now, I think Divine's something like 600 mil pure gems for an S grade. Or I've seen someone with 450 mil pure gems on their booth. So maybe it's 450, I don't know. But Blaze, I heard, is around 120, 150. Cyber, I think, is now like 150. So, and again, these are very rough values that I've heard. I don't know if those are accurate, but it's just getting so ridiculous that it's not really worth doing, and I don't recommend it to anyone. I won't be making a lot more trading videos off of, like how to profit and all that kind of stuff. The same basic concept applies of you need to hop lobbies to get cheap items, so that video still applies. It will always apply. It's just the prices on items are so much higher. You need so many gems to snipe items now that getting into trading as a beginner is very difficult. You basically need a handout, or, you need to sit in an AFK aura for weeks to even start, which is miserable, and I don't really recommend it. I've just been making videos mostly for fun to help the people that are left, but Deathball is a completely dying game. It's abandoned. That's just the facts. It probably won't be going anywhere. And it's more of a, if you're stubborn enough, you want to push past it, then that's what the videos are for. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. So, have a good one.